Now, as I get ready to introduce the moderator for this panel, and she will then in turn introduce the panelists, a little bit of background on what we're calling greenlining. As many of you do in your businesses, data, the use of data is essential to making sound decisions, sound business decisions. And we know the data tells us that when we look at the primary thing to build wealth, generational wealth, is home ownership. In Monroe County, the rate of home ownership for people of color is less than half of what it is for all Caucasian brothers and sisters. Those data points, I think, are about 77% and 32%. That will not get us to wellness. 2 conferences ago, my other partner in good, Simeon Bannister, he and I had this conversation about what can we start work on? And that's where we came up with the term greenlining, the opposite of redlining, which we think will take specific and deliberate action, not only by banks, but every entity in the home ownership ecosystem. 2 years ago, we had 4 bank presidents, CEOs or regional presidents on a panel talking about how their bank is committed to turning the data points around. And since that time, there have been 2 reports, one from the Attorney General's office and another from the Department of Financial Services in New York State, which discuss current redlining in Rochester. We have put together what we call a greenlining coalition here at ABC. And this coalition has been meeting since this past April, coming together to see, well, what can we do as a collective to make sure that 5 years from now, if this study is done again, the rate of home ownership for BIPOC individuals, the rate of lending in BIPOC-dominated neighborhoods increases and gets to at least equity. The moderator for the panel coming up is Leslie Curry. And I want to invite Leslie to turn her camera on and come up alongside, beside me. Leslie Curry is the Assistant Vice President and Community Development Officer for KeyBank. Based in Rochester, she has 20 years of experience and expertise as a loan officer and a real estate broker, most recently with Citizens Bank. A native Rochesterian, she's a homegirl. Ms. Curry is a graduate of RIT and Monroe Community College. And before I have her do that, I want, if you haven't yet put your name and rep your company or yourself in the chat, I want you to please do that now, because shortly when the panel gets going, we're going to turn the chat off and we're going to use the Q&A feature so that you can have questions. So Leslie, good morning, good morning, good morning. We have put together this panel, which you will introduce in a minute. And Leslie has been one of the people on the Greenlining Coalition. So Leslie, I turn it over to your capable hands.
Thank you, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine.
All righty. Well, good morning, everyone. And again, thank you, Mr. Underwood. I'm honored to be moderating this panel discussion today, representing KeyBank, who is a proud sponsor of the ABC series for a 2nd year in a row. Both our market president, Vince Lisi, and other leadership at KeyBank are really invested in the community and providing financial support for local nonprofit organizations through our foundation. The foundation mainly is there to address some of the racial wealth gap in our area. KeyBank prioritizes these activities by offering funding for nonprofit organizations, funding for small businesses, we have a special program for women in business. It's called Key for Women. And there's a host of activities that are centered around helping BIPOC small business entrepreneurs and women, succeed in their areas of expertise. KeyBank also offers a variety of mortgage options and special purpose credit programs to make homeownership easily accessible, offering solutions to a few of the largest barriers to homeownership, which typically are credit, cash for closing, lack of financial literacy or education. KeyBank offers a credit building program, free financial literacy, zero down payment programs with closing cost assistance, just trying to make homeownership, the homeownership goal for people a reality, right? So having said that, the tone for the panel today is, stats on some of the information that Jerome already shared. So I want to share some additional information with you, just some facts and statistics around like homeownership rates in our area. So as he mentioned, in October 2023, New York State Attorney General Letitia James released a new report detailing deep racial disparities in homeownership and access to home financing across the state. Among the report's top findings is a stark racial gap in homeownership rates in every region in New York, with white households owning their homes at nearly double the rates of households of color. These disparities are a significant contributor to the racial wealth gap and result in higher housing costs for home buyers of color, making it more challenging for communities of color to build lasting financial security and overcome decades of systematic discrimination, racism in the housing market. The report also offers some policy proposals to help close the homeownership gap. One of the things that has recently happened by way of the state of New York mortgage program, which is called Sunny Mae, it's an acronym. They have allocated, millions of dollars in grant funds assistance for first-time home buyers. That program allows potential buyers to be able to do much larger down payments, reducing obviously their loan amounts, which is gonna reduce their housing payment. So New York State has stepped up most recently in allocating some specific funds for that effort. In addition to that New York State report, there is a report that's put out by the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is a Black real estate trade organization for real estate professionals and businesses. They generate an annual report called the State of Housing in Black America, AKA the Sheba Report. They put this report out every year. And some of the statistics around that report for 2023 is that Black ownership rates were about 45% at the level, was only modestly higher than it was at the time of the passage of the 1968 Fair Housing Act. The gap in homeownership rates, blacks and whites, is larger than it was more than half a century ago. Lower median income and wealth, unfavorable housing market conditions, and continuing housing shortages, financial institutions' biases within the housing system are major impediments to Black homeownership gains. The median household income for whites remained far above for Blacks at $81,000, roughly $60 for white household, and $52,860 for their Black counterparts. Black communities are disproportionately vulnerable to the effects of climate change. That was a topic of discussion in this report. The concentration of Black families in areas that are highly exposed to increasingly frequent and severe natural disasters. 21 Blacks are among the majority of Americans residing in close proximity to these sites at high risk of flooding. the frequency and severity of climate disasters put significant pressure on the crumbling infrastructure of the long disinvested Black neighborhoods across the country, like those in New Orleans, Houston, Texas, Jackson, Mississippi, where catastrophic flooding has disproportionately affected low-income Black communities. So today we have a distinguished panel that will share their insight and expertise on how to move us forward with intentionality and share their organization's commitment to this work. So on our panel today, I'm pleased to share in this panel discussion with Karina Hernandez of M&T Bank, Rosalie Ramirez of Five Star Bank, Carol Wheeler of the City of Rochester, and Robin Wilt, broker owner and Town of Brighton board member. So for this first question, each panelist, it's a three-pronged question, so I may have to repeat it to you. But one, I would like you to tell us about your role at your institution. How did you become involved in the ABC's Greenlining initiative? And what do you feel are some root causes of disparity cited in the New York State Attorney General's report and the Sheba reports that I just mentioned? So Karina, would you like to start this one off?
Sure. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Buenos dias. So I'm Karina Hernandez. I've been originating for about 5 years. Prior to that, my history in finances has been with M&T, from business banking to investments, life insurance, personal banker. So well-rounded in the whole financial literacy for all of our customers. And how is my institution invested in preventing, I guess, or trying to promote home ownership? I would say that internally, we have absolutely encouraged all of our employees to participate in community engagement, allocating volunteer hours for that to happen. Internally in our mortgage department, we are encouraged to do the same. We have a nurture program. Nurture program internally, what that means is if any of our borrowers are unable to be pre-approvable at that moment for whatever reason, we will have a designated person that will guide this person in their financial journey to try to identify pinpoints and really empower them in their journey to figure out is home ownership for you. And if it is, the ultimate goal of their partnership is to get them pre-approved and hopefully into a home within a certain amount of time. And there was a third one, wasn't there? There was a third question.
How did you become involved in ABC's Greenlining initiative?
Oh, that's the most important one. So we were invited. So thank you, Jerome, for reaching out to M&T. We are huge community participants, not only regional wise. I would say our regional president, Dan Burns, is extremely involved in the community, but you heard from Beverly. All of our branch managers are encouraged to do this. And in our space, in my space, my dedication and my commitment to my community, not only as an employee of M&T, but personally as part of Rochester, of course, is really trying to identify what can we do. If we can all work collectively in this space of real estate, of home ownership, what can we pinpoint that we can all work together to prevent, these numbers to be so low, and hopefully in the next few years, target that and work together to be successful for all of our Black and brown minority individuals in the city of Rochester.
Well, thank you, Karina. So next, I'd like to pose the same question to Ms. Rosalie Ramirez of Five Star Bank. And I'll repeat the question again for you, Rosalie. If you could tell us about your role at Five Star, how you became involved in ABC's Greenlining initiative, and what do you feel may be some of the root causes of the disparity that we see in homeownership between Caucasians and the BIPOC community? We can't hear you. I think your mute might be on.
There we go. Good morning,
right.
everyone.
Good
Can you hear me?
morning. Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Rosalie from Five Star Bank. Buenos dias a todos. Thank you for inviting me today. I'll start with the Greenlining one. Well, I'll tell you real quick. CRA loan officer at Five Star. I've been in the banking business about 30 years. In the mortgage as a CRA loan officer, about 20 years of my banking business, completely devoted to my first-time home buyers in the Rochester community. Well known in the Hispanic community, since we are few, there's few of us, Karina, one in this business. So completely devoted to it. And in the Greenlining, again, like Karina, we were also invited, thanks to Jerome, for inviting Five Star to the committee. We are devoted at Five Star, completely devoted to and staying focused on the CRA lending. So when we were invited to this, of course, upper management went to the first few, and then they realized that the one that needed to be there was probably someone like me, because I'm the one that's really out in the community on a day-to-day meeting, and getting to know these first-time home buyers and knowing the needs of the community when it comes to these issues. So at Five Star, you know, and I'll say this real quick, like all the other counterparts on the CRA world in the Rochester area, we have specific programs for first-time home buyers. We continue to focus on their education. It is, for me, in the last 30 years in the banking business, I believe that a well-educated first-time home buyer is a better or a happier customer at the end. They know all the facts from the beginning. Five Star has special CRA programs, portfolio products, where we focus on low to mod neighborhoods in the city. With those programs, we promote better rates and more grants, so they can match those grants with any of the non-for-profit agencies here in the city, and they can layer as much money as possible. Some of our customers or our borrowers can end up with thousands, 20,000 in grants, you know, once they do the research and get to know all the programs out there. Savers clubs, we started a Savers club at Five Star. So our community is going to get as much attention from us as possible to make sure that we target these individuals, so we can help. I know that our on the Hispanic side is the same, you know, very few Hispanic loan officers, so we target as much as we can, we educate as much as we can, we provide as much as we can as far as great products and things like that, good rates and more grants available to the community.
Mhm.
Did I answer everything you needed?
So one final question. So regarding some of the reports that were put out by New York State, and also the report that I referenced, the Shiva report, the state of Black housing, which those numbers are pretty similar for the Hispanic community as well.
Yes, yes.
What do you think might be some of the root causes of that, of the numbers being so low, the disparity?
Education. I can't stress enough the education part. I think if we educate our borrowers, our first-time home buyers, I think they can learn and go to the right lenders out there.
Know what questions to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll know exactly what to ask the realtor, what to ask the attorneys, you know, what to ask the banker. So that way they don't get sucked into the wrong programs, the higher interest rate loans and things like that.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Miss Rosalie. So basically, just to kind of recap with what what I took away from what Karina and Rosalie said as far as what their institutions are doing that sound a little different to me. For M&T, they have a homeownership coach, it sounds like. So if there's a client who may not quite be ready just yet for home purchase, they can pair them up with someone and kind of coach them through the things that they need to do to prepare themselves, put themselves in a better financial situation to be able to purchase. And then with Five Star, I hear that they have a savings club, which I didn't know about, which is great because savings is a part of the underwriting process. When someone is, looking to apply for a mortgage, one of the things that's a part of that decision is assets and the ability for someone to save. So it's good to hear that M&T, or I'm sorry, Five Star has rolled that out. So now moving on to our next panelist will be Carol Wheeler from the city of Rochester. Good morning, Carol. It seems like it's been such a long time since I've seen you.
Such a long time.
Yesterday.
Good morning, and it is a pleasure to be here. I'm Carol Wheeler. I'm the manager of housing for the city, and in this position, I'm responsible for the oversight of the city's housing programs, which includes definitely down payment and closing cost assistance for first-time home buyers. We are also responsible for providing support services for our most vulnerable populations. We provide senior housing assistance to help seniors remain safe in their homes, the development of rental housing, as well as owner-occupied housing for both existing and new construction. We are just very focused now on increasing home ownership in our city. You have heard the statistics, and we are working to help make a difference. I have been invited to participate in Greenlining and happy to be a part as it helps to shape attitudes, improve lives, and make a visible difference in our neighborhoods.
Well, thank you. And I know that you've been with the city for many years, and I'm sure you've seen lots of different cycles of homeownership, in the city of Rochester. And if you had, from your perspective, from working for a municipality, what is it that you think might be some of the root causes as to why our homeownership rates are so low?
There are several, and I do have to admit, when after being in the city of Rochester and working in housing for many years, to see the same statistics year after year after year, with all the assistance and support that's out there, there has to be, and the data proves that there is some inherent barriers that have been difficult to overcome. Inherent barriers that prevent Black and Brown individuals or the BIPOC community, low-income neighborhoods, being able to secure the financial resources with lenders to be able to purchase. So yes, I believe that it is an attitude that is been prevalent. It's some inherent things that probably needs to change. And of course, I believe there is education that's needed, but I believe that attitudes, you can't change attitudes per se, but you can definitely help to mitigate some of them.
Well, thank you very much for that perspective. You know, I always think of barriers as being, stable employment. A lot of our LMI families may be in low wage jobs, um, you know, which means they're not earning as much to be able to secure housing and save for housing. Um, but the attitudes is a new phrase for me in relationship to this conversation. Um, and you're right. A lot of people have a lot of preconceived notions about trying to apply for a mortgage, thinking if they could even possibly be a homeowner. Maybe their parents were never homeowners or their grandparents were never homeowners, so they don't even really know what that looks like and what it takes to make that happen for them. So thank you for bringing up that attitude. I think we need to explore on that a little bit more.
Mhm.
So thank you again. So our next panelist, Miss Robin Wiltz. Robin is a real estate broker owner. She also sits on the town board of Brighton. So Miss Robin, tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and what you do for the Brighton Town Board, and what you think some of the barriers have been, like some of the root causes of barriers for homeownership or the disparity in homeownership rates amongst BIPOC community opposed to Caucasians. And how did you become involved in ABC's Greenlining initiative?
Okay, I'll probably take the last one first. So I listen to my elders. Jerome is one of my elders, and I have a deep regard for Jerome Underwood and the role that he's played in being a co-conspirator in empowerment of the Black community. And I am a real estate broker, and I have been for the past 20 years. And I got involved with the ABC Greenlining initiative through my role with the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors Black Caucus Affinity Group. And in its mission, the GRAR Black Caucus is dedicated to advancing Black leadership in real estate across the Greater Rochester region. And the caucus provides a platform to support the success of Black realtors at every stage of their career and actively recruits new members to the field of real estate because currently Black real estate professionals only represent 2% of the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors. So through those efforts, the caucus really seeks to cultivate greater awareness of the historical and contemporary realities of structural racism that have led to those significant disparities in housing valuation and rates of home ownership within our community. And being that we are co-creators of community, the Black Caucus promotes equitable opportunities in housing and economic development that lead to healthy and thriving neighborhoods. And as you can hear in that mission of the Black Caucus, as real estate professionals, it was really important for the caucus to acknowledge the historic role that realtors as a professional organization have played in the systemic practices like redlining, steering, and block busting that have undermined fair and equitable housing opportunity in our communities. So given that acknowledgement, it was really a no-brainer and a perfect segue for me to be involved with ABC's Greenlining initiative that seeks redress of the disparities created by that adverse legacy. So there's a great deal of overlap between the role of elected officials and the real estate industry in terms of addressing and closing the wealth gap. And so we know that home ownership is a huge factor in wealth accumulation over generations. And there's that strong correlation between who controls the land and who controls government. So both real estate and elected officials help to determine who has access to property within the community. So I thought it was especially important, given my dual role and perspective as a broker and an elected official, particularly as a Black woman serving in my community, to be involved in this initiative.
All right, thank you, Robin. So the next comment that I have, I'm going to put it back to Karina with M&T. So with some of the new regulation that's come out for banks in terms of um, not only now are banks evaluated on the traditional um, three points, which would be um, you know, volunteer service from a CRA perspective, um, funding to nonprofits from a CRA perspective, and lending to low to moderate income families and low to moderate businesses. Now they've thrown in an additional qualifier, so to speak, which is called MMT. So MMT is a tract or neighborhood that is predominantly um, minority. And so now there's another kind of box that lenders have to check now to make sure that they are meeting the requirements in lending in specific MMT areas, which probably were traditionally areas that they redlined. So, how has this new qualifier for banks, um, affected or changed or added anything where M&T is adding anything specifically to address that particular qualifier?
Well, speaking from the history of working at branches, being a banker, and now in this platform, I feel as a CRA loan officer, that's kind of mostly what we do. A lot of times we're really having conversations with non-for-profits, community-based agencies. We're speaking in churches, we're holding seminars. We spend a lot of time. We're boots on the ground. We're constantly going. So to me, that transition from what I used to do to now, it's not that different, because at M&T we have always encouraged our employees to go out there and do the same with various programs. One of the original programs that I can remember is the Bank at Work, where we go to businesses. And the idea initially was to promote our products. But something else has turned into that, something else called Money Mentor, which is essentially just educational classes on financial literacy, from life insurance to investment, financial growth, budgeting, home ownership. We purely go out there, myself included, as a business partner in the branches, but with branch managers, with bankers, with tellers. We go in these institutions, in these churches, and we go in their cafeteria, we go in their waiting room, wherever they have a space for us. And this is something that we do. So I don't see that it has been a drastic requirement for us, because we have always done it. I think an encouragement of course, from the payroll perspective, is each employee has allocated hours to be able to do this. So they are actually paid to be able to volunteer. And I think as team building internally, that's great. I think, if more companies did this, maybe, it create a better morale, and it will be more encouraging. As far as, how do we do it financially? We have always been huge contributors locally, and regionally, really, in entire Western New York. So I don't think we have ever struggled in the CRA space with,
Mhm.
kind of where our money goes. But I think when it comes to labor and taking our educating employees, bringing it out to the community where is needed, going out to the communities that we serve. If we have a branch within 5 miles, 10 miles, is this branch taking the initiative to reach out to that church, to that factory, to that small business bank owned, to be able to educate their staff? So I don't see that it has been a huge struggle. I think on my end, it's something that we do. And Rosalie, that's something we're constantly, as well, Leslie, CRA loan officers are tasked with being out there every single day. So on a different level for myself, because I'm the only certified rehab loan specialist in Rochester, it's a little bit more in depth, because it's taking more options to our clients. Just because you live in the city doesn't mean that you don't want to build in city. Just because you live in the city and your income is for a house perhaps in the city, it means that you could buy a house that needs a little TLC and you can do renovations. But it does take knowledge. It does take that that type of attitude change. And that's part of the Money Mentor, to help our customers understand what is required and what it's going to take for them to get to that next step.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. So now, Rosalie, I have a question for you, or I
Okay.
would like you to explain a little bit about. So we've used that term CRA, and we haven't really given a real definition of what it is and what it means for the audience. So do you mind speaking to the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, and what it is and what it means for banks?
So Community Reinvestment, CRA stands for Community Reinvestment Act. Oh, I'll be testing my knowledge. I can't remember the year.
77.
There you go. Thank you. It's always on my compliance test, and I always have to think twice about that. Yes, it was originally so we can focus on those specific areas and invest in those communities. That's why banks try to separate the loan office, not separate them, but have one specific one so they can concentrate on that. And that is my job, yours, Karina's. We focus just on those specific first-time home buyers in those specific neighborhoods that need a little bit more guidance, more education, a little bit more TLC, like Karina says. And that's why banks like Five Star, we focus on some specific portfolio products based on those neighborhoods so we can attract more buyers. And just like Karina says, people think that because they live in the city, they have to buy in the city. They don't. You can have a house anywhere you want as long as you qualify income-wise. You could be low income and live in the suburbs. Of course, we are promoting city living, but we want to make sure that those specific neighborhoods get the attention that they need.
Great, yeah. So with having said that, Miss Wheeler, could you talk a little bit about Rochester's housing stock from the city's perspective?
Well, the housing stock within the city of Rochester, it is older housing stock. The majority of the housing have been built or was built before 1978. Probably a lot of it before 1940. So it is a older housing stock. And one of the things that does happen over time, some of that housing needs to be replaced. And so you do see houses that are coming down, but one of the things that we are doing is doing all that we can to increase the quality of housing within the city. And part of that is the Buy the Block program, which is definitely greenlining, because we are taking those vacant lots that are located, particularly in formerly redlined areas, and building on them, building new single-family homes that are of high quality, and they're right in the neighborhood. Those neighborhoods, as I mentioned, that were redlined. And by doing that, we're doing a couple of different things. We're improving the overall housing stock within the city of Rochester, as well as giving folks an opportunity to actually own in their neighborhood, which means that those neighborhoods more than likely will become a lot more stable. And that's something that we are very, very interested in doing with our Buy the Block program. We started out last year with a goal of building 24 homes in that first phase. And what has happened so far is that we have actually completed and sold, and those families are in those homes. That was 13 of those 24 have been fully occupied. We are working on the next set, and they should be done before the end of this calendar year. And we're moving on to another neighborhood. I would just like to add that the first by the block was actually in the northeast area of the city. And one of the reasons that we identified that area is because it is one of the lowest income census tracts in the city as well as in New York State. And with that, we were able to actually build on some investments that are taking place because we're intentional also as far as making sure that lower income neighborhoods, BIPOC neighborhoods are being invested and improved. And so there are several different activities that has already taken place, which includes like the Edna Craven Estates, Pueblo Nuevo, Upper Falls Square, a new gas station, improvements in the Anthony Jordan Health Center, the improvements to Rochester Management's Chatham Gardens, 2 new schools in the area, one being number 22, a new fireman's hall, and there are other improvements that are planned for that general vicinity. And so with that, we're hopeful that not only are we building homes, but we're actually helping to improve lives, helping people build wealth, and making a visible difference in our lower income neighborhoods.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Robin, question for you. So I know that you're very active in local politics here. What do you think from a legislative perspective that it might be an easy way to help with the disparity? I don't know, anything you think that can be done legislatively that could be an easy fix or a low-hanging fruit option to help the effort?
Well, thank you for that question. I think on the local government level, we can really address zoning, exclusionary zoning code that we have that disallows certain density of housing from being built in certain communities. I think there was a bill at the state level that was very unpopular, quite frankly, among a lot of suburban communities that would mandate certain increases in affordable units within our communities over time. And so that being said, I think there are a number of things that we can do as real estate brokers too, to ensure that we are closing that gap. And I'm going to engage in a little tough talk here. I think one of the single most impactful things that we can do as real estate brokers is not engage in discriminatory practices. And I really need my fellow real estate professionals to understand that fair housing, it's not just an intellectual exercise, but it's an everyday lived practice within our profession. So we have to follow fair housing laws and equally serve our clients so that everyone has access to their choice in housing. Also, when we see violations in fair housing as a self-policing industry, I think we need to report it. And just last year, I had the misfortune of having to report the fair housing violations of one of my colleagues, and it wasn't easy, but we can't improve the status quo unless we hold ourselves accountable. We see the metrics and the persistence of these deleterious racialized practices among real estate professionals, and we need to specifically target those deleterious practices, and because despite the problems that we see with the discriminatory practices among realtors, we have challenges to things like the creation of an affinity caucus for Black realtors that increases the visibility of Black professionals in the industry and helps promote Black home ownership. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we could do, just follow the existing laws We know that, you know, redlining still happens. We know that steering still happens. So, you know, while we look towards greenlining for it to have its full effect and impact, we have to make sure that we're still not redlining and steering and doing all of those things. So
Great, great, great. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
So I guess right now would be a good time to open it up for Q&A. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a few actually. The chat is the Q&A is quite busy.
Okay.
So I'm monitoring a couple of things here. We're going to try to get as many as possible. So there's one. It says, "Are redlining victims otherwise fully qualified to get a mortgage, but are denied based purely on their race?" I'll repeat that. Are redlining victims otherwise fully qualified to get a mortgage, but are denied based purely on their race? And that can be anybody.
So I'll try to address that one. So from a lender's perspective, sometimes lenders have policies and procedures in place from a risk perspective, but what it also does is create disparity, right? So one of the an example of that would be, you know, you're looking to purchase let's say a house that's, you know, $30,000, and you may be qualified as far as your credit and stable employment and income and all the other things that a lender may look for. But because of the dollar amount of your purchase request, a bank will say, well, you know, that's really not a profitable loan for us to do a $30,000 mortgage, because many banks will have minimum loan amounts that they adhere to for several different reasons. So you could be denied your application, not so much based on you and your financial situation and criteria, but because of the collateral, the property itself. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, I understood it correctly.
Here's another one. This one is for Rosalie, Leslie, and Robin. What annual incomes, are you able to share what annual incomes are qualifying with credit repair and grants that are also provided to the prospective buyer? Let me repeat that. What annual incomes are qualifying with credit repair and also other grants that prospective home buyers are getting?
I can take it. I'll take that one. Hello, Ruhi. So it's good to see her name on these on
Yes,
these conferences. It's been a while. So the income limit, it's going to be hard for me to say because that's going to depend on the household. Okay. So for every different products, especially CRA products, we're going to have income limits depending on the household. So certainly I can send some of those offline to you or send them to someone here that they can share with the group if that be. But again, based on the income, the income limit will be different for each different products, different grants, and different agencies. So, but we can certainly follow up with those numbers, those income limits to you.
And let me just add one thing to that too. In regards to income limits and grants and loan programs, they're all could be different. So sometimes, you know, if you're receiving grant assistance from a lender, you know, they use one number, you know, irregardless to your family size, whatever that number is, 80% of the median, 120% of the median, that's the number that the bank is going to use. And the bank also is only going to use applicant income. So if you're married and only the wife is going on the loan, then the bank is only looking at the wife's income. However, when you're applying for grants outside of the bank, you know, maybe through the city of Rochester, County of Monroe, or any other nonprofit HUD approved agency, they're going to take a look at household income. Right. So it doesn't matter who's going on the loan. You know, if you've got a college student that's working and you got 2 working people in the household, for grants, you know, pretty much through state, federal funding, they're going to take a look at the household income. So you may not, sometimes people are over income for grants outside of the bank, but you still may be able to take advantage of closing cost assistance or some type of program within the bank itself.
Right. Yes.
Great. Here's another question, and I think it's general, but I'll point it to Ms. Wheeler and then to anybody else. Some commentary first. Recently, the City of Rochester announced property assessment increases again in 2024 that have basically doubled the value of many homes within the city. How will these assessments affect home ownership for BIPOC individuals? Will this exacerbate the issue of lower income ownership among BIPOC individuals? Very popular topic going around right now, the assessments. And it's not just the city of Rochester, it's all around Monroe County. People should know it's all around. But any comments on that? Let's start with Carolyn.
Sure, sure. There are some. And I'll just say the reassessment is just one thing that may, if you want to say, hinder. However, as far as that reassessment goes, there are a couple of things that I do want to point out. Just because your assessment has gone up doesn't necessarily mean that the taxes are going up. As particularly for those existing property owners. I mean, it may or may not, and it is still yet to be determined. If there are individuals that want to challenge that assessment, they do have an opportunity to do that. And just like there has been in the past assistance and support for low-income households, and I won't just say BIPOC, but just low-income households to afford homes, we will continue to do that and to make that happen. One of the things that we know right now, when it comes to purchasing, the inventory has been low for a while. And one of the things that we're needing to do is to make sure that the inventory is available for households to actually purchase. And one of the things that the city is doing, along with our land bank, is to make sure that we control more inventory so that lower income households will have the opportunity to purchase a property that's going to be affordable to them.
Anybody else want to touch that one about the assessments? Okay.
Well, I will say as another person in a municipal role that, you know, we have seen housing pricing increasing rapidly over the past 3 years. And a lot of it is due to low inventory. And so just the lack of availability of housing has increased housing values. And from a municipal standpoint, we have equalization rates that we have to adhere to. And so once you get too far out of line with what the market rates are, your municipalities are encouraged, strongly encouraged by the state, if not required by the state, to do revaluation. So that's why we're seeing these reassessments. It's because the market values have gotten so far out of line with assessed values, and the state is trying to bring those more in line. But again, they don't always negatively impact the amount you're going to pay in taxes. So I think people need to be really cognizant of that.
All right. I think we have time for about one more. I'm going to try to combine a couple here. Really good questions from the participants. Let me see if I can combine this. Uh, so someone asked, so, it seems to be a lot of traps. Is there a blueprint, a step-by-step guide, into how does someone become a homeowner? One, and I'm going to sort of couple that with, how do, there seems to be some systemic built-in bias. So
Mhm.
how do BIPOC people overcome those biases? And again, the other person was asking, where's the step-by-step guide? So that goes to Rosalie was talking about education, Karina talked about education, and that education question.
If I can start off, I
Yeah.
can only speak to how I address that. I'm not an underwriter by any means, but I feel there are times that where I have to originate, I have to process, I have to underwrite, and I have to get to the closing table. So there, to me, is always going to be the education piece, the just save it for a rainy day type of situation. Just take this, and it may not apply to you, but it may apply to you. So regarding the roadmap, I have my own literature that depending on my audience, depending on who's in front of me, it may be that I can't do everything by phone. I can't do everything via video. I have to meet these people 10 times before they actually go to closing, 10 times before I have to get a pre-approval through. So education, it's huge to get the customer to understand that they have to be empowered with that and with the steps to follow when it comes to credit, when it comes to how they view their income and how a lender is going to utilize that income and how they use their bank account. Those merry-go-round accounts, those things they do at work where they pull money and then they make a deposit. Yeah, that's difficult to document because it's a large cash deposit. So in my experience and what I do, it goes back to education. It goes back to here is the roadmap. However, we might have to take a side road in your situation because your employment history or your credit history does not align with what traditionally is looked at in underwriting. And underwriting is essentially just a lender's roadmap to assessing risk. And I can't stress that enough. We're assessing a risk, is how risky it is for us to engage in this transaction. Me as a loan officer, I want to help you as much as I can, and I want you to be a homeowner. But eventually, it is for 30 years, it is a credit commitment that you're making. Are you ready, and are we ready to enter into that credit commitment with you? I don't know if that helped answer some of the questions.
I do want to just add, when we talk about education and we tend to think about it as adults in coming in and getting educated, I believe where we need to start is before young adults get out of school and teaching them financial literacy and really talking about banking, getting them involved in banking earlier on so that they're more apt to make better decisions before they decide that they want to purchase. They've already got into some of the habits. But I will say, as far as the roadmap, if you will, the banks, the city, the Financial Empowerment Center, there are ways, there are paths that people have put together to help on this platform. And really want everyone to feel empowered to take advantage of what's out there because there's a lot of resources out there. And I am so happy for everyone that's on this panel because they have been with, I'm just going to say, been with me on this journey for a while. And it's all about making sure that we continue to work together, always making improvements, so that hopefully, and I'm not going to say hope, it will happen, that this home ownership rate will increase. But it's not just a city thing, it's not just a bank thing, it's all of our thing.
Right.
Thank you, Miss Wheeler. So I think it was some of your sentiments. You took some of my closing remarks. So let me just,
Okay,
let
sorry.
me just say, let me just say in conclusion this morning, I mean, we've heard a variety of different perspectives regarding what some of the local lenders are doing in this effort, special programs that they have for people who may not be ready, who are looking to save. So there's help and resources out there for people in that regard. And solving this issue, the disparities that we face right now, I feel, you know, it's going to take a all hands on deck approach, right? Lenders need to be involved. Nonprofit organizations need to be involved. Our legislators need to be involved. But more importantly, the community needs to be involved. The individuals who are actually seeking or need to seek home ownership as a way of building generational wealth. They've got to be able to go out there, look stuff up online, ask questions when they go into the bank, find out. They've got to do some of their own legwork, right? Because they're not going to know what's out there if they don't reach out there and try to get this information. And the information is there. It's readily available. It's just sometimes people just don't know how to approach it. And that's kind of where we come into play. So thank you, panel. Thank you, ABC, for having me as a moderator. I hope I did a good job.
You did a fantastic job. And just before we go, I want to acknowledge there was another question in the chat that I think is really important. And it's about climate change. And it's from our dear friend and climate justice fighter from Abby. And her question was about the Greenlining process and how much are we thinking about climate change. Abby, we're going to invite you to on these meetings because we know that this is a serious issue with respect to climate change and its potential impact to marginalized people. So we want to make sure that we get closer to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because Ms. Wheeler talked about the housing stock and how do we prepare for that, and that's a major issue. While at the same time, this overall issue of closing the racial wealth gap through home ownership is a significant issue, and we don't want to leave any stone unturned. One of the things we've been challenged with, and if any of the folks on that are participating, we have been trying to get someone from the appraisal business to come to the table. And on a serious tip, what we found out through Ms. Robin Wilt is that there's no affinity association of appraisers. They don't have a Black Realtors, a Black, Robin mentioned the Black Realtors Association. There's no affinity group of appraisers, which I find interesting. Because
not in this area. There is one actually. I just came across one a few months ago. In I think the Maryland area maybe out, but there is one, but it's not nationwide.
So if anybody knows an appraiser or 5 or 6 or 7 in Rochester, tell them they have an open invitation. Tell them to call Action for a Better Community. Tell them to call me because they are an integral part of what we call the homeownership ecosystem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, we need appraisals at the table because they can make or break the deal. So again, panel, just outstanding. Thank you, Leslie, for taking on the task of moderating what is an important panel for us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
In your debt. Thank you, all of you.